We're back again. It's the Pop Culture Cosmos. And yes, it is the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast. Once again, this is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Thank you. Thanking you so much for being a part of today's show. But it wouldn't be a Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast without my good friend. He is the guru, at least that's what the scores this week are telling me, of the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast. You got to check out the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast today on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and over 30 different podcast outlets. It is my good friend, still my good friend. It is my good friend, still my good friend, even though he beat me last week. But be that as it may, it's Tyler Baker. What's going on, man? Looks like you're going to be 2-0 once again.
Yeah, man. It's a pretty good week in fantasy. How are you doing today?
I'm actually doing well. Like I was telling you, I was hoping that Jordan Howard gets a little bit of turf toe, but outside of that, it's looking pretty good for both my teams.
Good.
I mean, like I said, if you're getting 130 points in your fantasy team, whether win or lose, that's what you want to do to stay competitive.
Sure.
As far as anything lower than that, just kind of got to worry about your team. But if you're scoring in the high 120s, 130s, 140s, and beyond, like you've been scoring, then you've really got a lot of good things to talk about, and definitely got to take a lot of your advice, because right now, man, you are on a roll.
Well, it's week 2 now, and so we're beginning to see who these teams are. Coming into the season, looking at a team like, the Browns. Oh, the Browns are awful. The Browns, probably not going to win any games again. Well, they tied the Steelers, and today they were a Dan Bailey away from beating the Saints. So I don't think we can look at the Browns as one of those pushover teams anymore.
No, you cannot. What is it? 4 missed field goals, extra points?
It was 2 extra points and 2 field goals.
Okay, so 4 kicks overall. Just absolutely just disgusting.
Devastating.
And that's something, that just means something that you got to go. Just already, those are the type of things. When he gets to the team plane, they head back home, you go ahead as a GM, you say, you know what, here's some tickets to go to your home.
You're on a different plane, buddy.
Exactly. And I don't feel too much empathy for these kickers, because you know what, you're paid several $100,000 a year to just kick a football. And if you cannot do it right, I mean, there are those rare times when they have to go ahead and tackle somebody. Okay. All right. That's when you might be earning your paycheck really, really, but you are supposed to be earning your paycheck getting that ball in between the uprights, and 4 different occasions when you are not getting that ball in between those uprights and just not getting the job done. There's no excuse at all. And I know it hurt a lot for fantasy owners, because whoever is interested in the Cleveland kicker knows that they're probably going to get a lot of extra point and field goal opportunities. If they are anywhere consistent, they would actually have a higher or better than average kicker that was available to them if it was actually someone competent kicking the ball.
Yeah, and the Browns are doing some good things. They are releasing Josh Gordon, which is probably a good thing, because he was a distraction. He was coming in late to meetings, and they were worried about the sobriety and just didn't want to deal with it.
Well, actually, you didn't even mention what the kicker was. At a commercial taping that was not sanctioned by the team, he severely pulled or whatever, a hamstring, and had listed himself out for this weekend's game.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
So here, if you're the GM of the Cleveland Browns, I'm on that flight right now to go ahead before the team gets on the plane to give Josh Gordon and the Cleveland kicker, Gonzalez, I think is his last name, both a ticket out of town, and to say, you know what, I'm done with you.
I read where they're going to try to trade him. Good luck with that. The guy is 2 strikes on the 3-strike rule. Like you said, he's calling his own injuries and declaring himself. So it's getting rid of those distractions, I think, would really help Cleveland. And a rookie named Antonio Galloway, really stepped up today and showed that he could do some of that down the field work. Because with Landry there, Landry is magician in the middle. He is a possession receiver, excellent receiver. And the more balance this team gets, the better they're going to get.
I will say this: when it comes to Cleveland, they are still looking like a sub 500 team for me now.
Mm-hmm.
But once they learn how to win and get over that hump, they remind me a lot of the Philadelphia 76ers in basketball. The 76ers were a losing team under Sam Hinkie as GM. They really bottomed out. They really just went ahead and tanked but got draft picks after draft picks. And they started to build slowly from within. They got themselves a good coach. They were willing to lose a lot early. And wouldn't you know, the team grew. They got pieces around it. And look at them now. They're one of the best teams in the NBA East. I see that similar type of scenario with the Cleveland Browns. Not yet, but someday soon, Cleveland fans, you are going to have yourselves a really good team.
Well, and I think what we're seeing now is them turning the corner. I'm not saying Cleveland's great. I'm just saying that they're not the Cleveland that we've seen for so many years. They're starting to turn that corner, and it's exciting to see.
It is indeed, and it is indeed. But there were a lot of other games that were out there, a lot of other action besides what went on in Cleveland and the headache that was their kicking game. What other things stood out to you as far as this weekend in the NFL?
Well, the last time we talked about Matt Stafford and Jimmy Garoppolo having bounce-back games. We saw those games. We talked about Amari Cooper having a bounce-back game. He did have that. What really stuck out to me today, though, was Fitzmagic. And we talked about him last time, and I said, you know what? Don't get too excited. This is a Saints defense that was not very good. Today, he came out and completed over 80% of his passes against the Eagles, and he was throwing dimes in that game. So I kind of poo-pooed it a little bit, but after going out and doing that against the Eagles, I think you have to respect the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick is actually a viable fantasy play now. And the weapons around him, DeSean Jackson, the consistency that he's able to connect with him, especially some of those routes down the field and getting him into space, that brings Jackson back into the fantasy relevance. So I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to have a pretty big decision to make when Jameis Winston is able to come back, because last year the NFC South sent 3 teams to the playoffs and none of them were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And here we are at the beginning of this season. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 2-0. They're leading the division. What they've got right now is working. And I think when Winston comes back, he might be holding a clipboard.
Funny. Did I not hint that the last time around?
You did. But you know what? When he came out and did it against the Saints, it was like, okay. But he did it against what I think is one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. You have to stand up and take notice at this point. Absolutely. You were right.
Patting myself on the back here. Buccaneers no more. And they've got not only one, not 2, but 3 premier wide receivers that you need to put as far as either a wide receiver 1, 2, or flex in right now, each and every week until they prove otherwise. And like you said, Fitzmagic is back. It's there. And 2 of his 3 career 400-yard games have come in the past 2 weeks. So that might be something a lot of people need to key on. Whatever it is they're doing, it's working well. Even if the fact that their defense maybe allows a lot of points themselves, it doesn't matter. They're scoring at a high rate, and things are looking good right now in Tampa Bay.
Well, for fantasy purposes, them having a bad defense is really a good thing. That means that Fitzmagic is going to have to air it out, and that means Mike Evans and DeSean Jackson and Chris Godwin. It means those guys are going to be targeted a lot. Even O.J. Howard got a long one today.
Yes, he did. That's what I was going to tell you. They've got a lot of great options right now for Fitzmagic. I just want to keep calling him until he proves otherwise. And he's done a great job, and more power to him. And like I said, if I was the coach of Tampa Bay right now, I would not take him off that seat right now. He is.
You can't. Well. You can't do it. No, you can't.
Another quarterback that's even hotter.
Ooh, yeah.
Hotter than Fitzmagic is Patrick Mahomes. And I'm telling you what, right now, he has played at a level I did not even think he was capable of. So really, I was off the beaten path with that one. You were a little bit more in tune with that. 6 touchdowns so far this weekend, 10 touchdowns overall this season so far after 2 games. Just a truly incredible number. What's going on in Kansas City that's making everything click so well for their passing offense?
Well, Mahomes has a rocket of an arm. I mean, he has a cannon. And when you've got a guy like Tyreek Hill that can get downfield and you can hit him, oh, that's something defenses have to take notice of. Today, he managed to get Travis Kelce involved. 10 targets, 7 receptions for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what you expect out of Travis Kelce. You didn't see it last week. You also didn't see a lot of Sammy Watkins last week. Sammy Watkins had 100 yards receiving too. So Mahomes is showing that he can get all of these pieces involved. And much like Fitzpatrick, Mahomes has a lot of really good weapons that he can go to.
That's true. He does have a lot of offensive weapons he can go to. Very, very good design that from whether it's Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, just so many different options. Sammy Watkins played extremely well today. Travis Kelce, the list goes on and on there in Kansas City. So if anybody has anyone on their offensive set as far as quarterbacks, wide receivers, running back, and even tight end, look to start them at least in the near future. If that's pretty much the beat that I'm getting right now at this time.
Sure, and much like we were talking about Tampa Bay, the Kansas City defense is not very good, and so they're going to get scored on, and that's going to put Mahomes in a position where he's going to be able to make some things happen downfield. Oh, and he's pretty good at running the ball too.
So I noticed that, and that definitely gives him that dual threat option, which I know a lot of people, such as myself, like when it comes to selecting a quarterback. On the other end, you have someone that's also done a great job of passing, but the fact is it took away from what could have been a very promising running game, and that's in Pittsburgh, where because they were behind so far so quickly, it looked like it was going to be nothing but pass after pass after pass. We've seen this before from Ben Roethlisberger, where he gets a high volume of passing attempts, and that means actually a good thing for fantasy owners if they have him as their quarterback.
He threw the ball 60 times today.
And that's not a record for him.
I think it's probably the most attempts so far this season. I mean, it's only week 2, but
yeah, but I've seen him throw 60 plus, I believe, and I think 70 at one point in time, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Well, that means really good fantasy production. Unfortunately, the Steelers right now are having some issues. They're having some issues on defense with tackling and scheme. Antonio Brown seemed disgruntled today. So there are some issues that Mike Tomlin is going to have to figure out because this team and the Steelers have always been really good about playing down to their opponents and then coming through when they're facing the top teams in the league. They need to find some consistency and they need to stick with what they do well. A balanced offense is what they do well. They did not have a balanced offense today. James Conner only ran the ball 8 times. And as good as Ben Roethlisberger is, if you want to win football games, you need to have a balanced offense.
They almost came back and won, though. Almost, but almost only counts in horseshoes. Speaking of something that almost counts like horseshoes, we had another tie. Just the NFL just does not get it. What's going on? What was going on in Green Bay? Just I cannot, and more kicking woes on top of that as well.
Yeah, this was not a good day for kickers. But Aaron Rodgers, we didn't know if he was going to play. He did. He wasn't super productive in this game, but he did enough to put up 29 points against a good Vikings defense. This was a really good. This was a really tough matchup for the Packers, and the Vikings have an excellent defense, and they gutted it out, pulled out a tie. But again, it came down to some kicking woes, and that seemed to be one of the themes in week 2 of the NFL.
Could have been worse. You could have had a player retire at halftime, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later here. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna actually, get to the latter stages of our show right now when it comes to buying or selling. So this is always one of our favorite portions of our show. So I'm going to ask you, my friend, buy or sell Ryan Fitzpatrick again?
Well, you don't want to buy when assets are high, but if you have Fitzpatrick, I think you have to play him. If you manage to pick him up for the waiver wire, you have to play him at this point. You're not gonna trade for him because Winston will be there, holding the clipboard, and I can't imagine it would be more than 2 bad games before they would put him in. But I won't say buy him, but I'll say play him if you got him. I wouldn't try to pull off a trade for him because you're going to end up overpaying, I think, because he's hot. He's really hot. So
buy or sell AJ Green?
Oh, you know what? 3 touchdowns is kind of fluky. But he's AJ Green. Now he's going to have good games and bad games, and he does have the red rifle throwing to him, and there's some consistency issues there. But Joe Mixon is going to be out for a couple of weeks. They will have Giovanni Bernard in there. I think Gio Bernard is a very capable running back. But I could see a situation where they're going to lean a little bit more on the passing game, and Andy Dalton is always looking to throw the ball to AJ Green. So as high as AJ Green's stock is right now, if you can get him, get him.
Buy or sell Eli Manning? Is it time for him to go out to pasture?
That's another guy who needs a plane ticket to an alternate destination. Watching that game tonight, and it's so sad because watching Saquon Barkley, he is a phenomenal running back, absolutely phenomenal running back. Odell Beckham Jr. is arguably one of the best receivers in the league, and it's just a shame to see Eli Manning just fumble this all away. Now, they do have some problems with the offensive line. It got banged up more tonight. But Eli Manning has been on a downhill, a downward spiral for a couple of years now. And with the second pick in the draft, the Giants decided to get Barkley. I think that was a good move, but they really have to start looking for a quarterback.
Now, is it time for him, like you said, for another destination, or just really to just retire and join his brother in all those commercials that he's doing?
I think so. I mean, he's had a good career, won a couple Super Bowls. Nobody can ever take that away from him. But he hasn't looked good. He didn't look good last year. Year before last, he didn't look good, and he's not looking very good this year. I mean, he was just flat out missing throws tonight against the Cowboys, and it's just a shame because Evan Ingram, another excellent piece on that offense. Sterling Shepard. I mean, there are some really, really good players on that offense, and then you've got Eli Manning, and it's kind of sad.
Buy or sell Blake Bortles as a number 1 quarterback on your team?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because
that's the one I was saving for last there for you. That's the one I was saving for last.
Yeah. When you have an excellent defense, you can do a lot of things. And I really liked what they did tonight. They did not have Leonard Fournette, but they came out with a nice short passing game. And there are some young receivers on that team. Dede Westbrook, Keenan Cole is the other one. And did you see that catch? There was a catch down the sideline where Keenan Cole just reached up kind of behind him with one hand, grabbed the ball, then brought it over the defender and brought it in. It was Odell Beckham-esque.
Which seems to be the trend that everybody's trying to duplicate.
Sure. Well, when he made that catch, I mean, it just set the bar so high. So now every catch like that, every one-handed extended catch is going to be compared to that because that catch that Beckham made was just so incredible. But in Jacksonville, Blake Bortles is not making the mistakes that he's had, or not made the mistake. He's not making the mistakes that he has made in the past. And he's got some really young, very athletic receivers that if he can get them in space or get them downfield in stride, really good things are going to happen. I don't know if I like Blake Bortles from a fantasy standpoint because, again, when Leonard Fournette comes back, I think the offense is going to move around him. They're still going to want him to do as least as they need him to do. So you don't want Blake Bortles throwing the ball 60 times like Roethlisberger did today. So I don't know how much fantasy production will come from Bortles, but in a game like today where they had to put up some points against the Patriots, he did a really good job. He was very efficient.
So is this the end of the 90-yard passing games from Blake Bortles, or do you still see like sometimes where, like you said, because of the reliance that they would like to have on Leonard Fournette when he comes back healthy, do you see a coming back to the norm for him, meaning he should in other words, meaning he should not be a number one option for your quarterback?
No, I think Jacksonville's smart, and I think they're going to ask him to do just what they need to ask him to do, and that's it. I don't think that they're going to put the team on his shoulders and expect him to win every week. That hasn't worked for them in the past. They've got a good thing going now. They're undefeated, and I think they're going to continue to use Blake Bortles as least as they have to.
All right, and last thing I'm going to hit at you with, my friend, on today's program. Are there any available fantasy football options you believe right now in upstate New York in Buffalo or in the Phoenix area in Arizona? Are there any options that you think should be starting on your fantasy football team?
You know what? That's difficult. I think David Johnson is definitely one of the best running backs in the league, but as long as Sam Bradford is their quarterback, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it was dismal. Didn't he have less than 100 yards passing today?
Yep.
I mean, that is just not acceptable for an NFL team. But that might be a good trade target if the David Johnson owner in your league is not happy, maybe try to pull a little trade, and because I think that is going to come back around, because the reality is they did not get him the ball. He didn't run the ball at all in the first half. How do you have a guy like David Johnson on your team and you don't give him the ball? So they're going to have to figure that out. I think that they will figure that out. It's no secret that he's the best player on that team. But I mean, today he only ran the ball 13 times. And he was barely targeted in the passing game, and he's the best player on the team. So there are better days for David Johnson. I would recommend trying to get him on your team.
Once again, it is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt Podcast. If you want exclusive tips, hints, things you need to do on your waiver wire, adjustments that you might want to make, requests as far as trades or anything of that nature that you need advice upon, go ahead, join the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt Podcast Facebook group. There's a lot of people already on there, over 200 individuals already in that group. A lot of them do answer questions. Not only does Tyler Baker, but a lot of other people as well. They throw in their 2 cents so you can get an idea of what you might want to do as far as lineup changes, injuries, trades, waiver wire pickups, things of that nature for your fantasy football team. In fact, I got the advice from you this past weekend in regards to Leonard Fournette, whether or not to start him or not, from the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt Podcast Facebook group. So you got to join that today. Again, if you want to hear full episodes, you just got to check us out. Pop Culture Cosmos channel on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and over 30 different podcast outlets. Tyler, it's always great having you on the show, my friend. Looking forward to hearing more from you later in the week for week 3 in the NFL. Just so glad to have you part of the show. And always, my friend, glad to have you part of the Pop Culture Cosmos.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Gerald.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Just hope you keep going with those 150-plus point games so you look like the guru that you are, my friend. Wouldn't be much of a guru if you were only getting like 50 points. That's all
I know, right? Thanks,
always great. Yes, yeah, anytime, my friend. Always great to have you part of the show and part of the pop culture Cosmos.